99% of you are not subscribed to the channel. At 1,000 subscribers, I will post a series of special stories. Subscribe now.
Zara Mercer was an ordinary 12-year-old girl, living in the sleepy town of Willow Creek, where the most exciting thing to happen was the annual county fair. Life was simple, predictable, and safe. Zara loved it that way. She spent her days playing with her friends, riding her bike along the dusty roads and exploring the fields that stretched endlessly beyond the town's edge. The world was big, but Willow Creek was her whole universe. On that particular evening, the sky was a canvas of deep purples and oranges, the sun sinking slowly behind the horizon. Zara had stayed out later than usual, losing track of time as she wandered through the tall grass of the meadow near her home. She loved this time of day, the peaceful quiet, the way the world seemed to hold its breath as night fell. But as she made her way back toward town, something strange caught her eye. A light. Faint at first, then growing brighter, like a star falling from the sky. Zara paused, squinting up at the heavens. It wasn't a shooting star, nor was it an airplane. The light was moving too fast, too erratically. It zigzagged across the sky, pulsing with a strange, eerie glow. Before Zara could react, the light descended rapidly, heading straight for her. Panic gripped her as the light enveloped her in its blinding brilliance. She tried to scream, but the sound caught in her throat. Her body felt weightless, as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. A strange humming filled her ears, a vibration that resonated deep within her chest. The world around her blurred and twisted, the familiar landscape of Willow Creek fading away into a void of white light. Zara's mind raced. Was this a dream? A nightmare? She struggled to move, to fight against whatever force was pulling her away from her home, but it was futile. The light was overwhelming, pressing down on her from all sides, filling her with a sense of dread unlike anything she had ever known. When the light finally dimmed, Zara found herself lying on a cold metallic surface. The air was sterile, tinged with an unfamiliar metallic scent that made her nose wrinkle. She blinked, trying to clear her vision, but the room she was in remained alien and unrecognizable. The walls were smooth, a dark reflective material that seemed to absorb the dim light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols glowing softly were etched into the walls, pulsing rhythmically like a heartbeat. Zara sat up slowly, her head spinning. Her heart pounded in her chest, fear clawing at her insides. She was no longer in Willow Creek. She was somewhere else, somewhere far, far away. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. She had been taken, abducted by something, by someone. Suddenly, the door to the room slid open with a soft hiss. Zara gasped as three figures entered, their forms tall and slender, moving with an unnatural grace. They were unlike anything Zara had ever seen, like creatures from the wildest sci-fi movies her father loved to watch. Their skin shimmered with an iridescent sheen, shifting colors with each step they took, from deep blues to vibrant greens. Their eyes were large black pools, void of any emotion or warmth. Zara could feel their gaze on her, studying her, analyzing her. She tried to scramble back, but her body wouldn't respond the way she wanted it to. Fear had paralyzed her, making her limbs heavy and uncooperative. One of the beings approached her, extending a long, delicate finger towards her face. Zara flinched, closing her eyes, expecting pain or something worse. But the touch was surprisingly gentle, though it sent a cold shiver down her spine. The alien made a series of clicks and hums, a language that Zara couldn't begin to comprehend. The other two beings responded in kind, their voices resonating in the air, creating a dissonant harmony that set Zara's teeth on edge. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but all she could do was sit there, frozen in terror as the beings continued their strange communication. The alien that had touched her seemed to come to a decision. It motioned to the others, and they moved towards a set of controls embedded in the wall. With a few quick gestures, the room's lighting changed, casting eerie shadows across the metallic surfaces. Zara watched, her breath hitching in her throat, as a cylindrical device descended from the ceiling, hovering above her head. It emitted a low hum, vibrating slightly as it powered up. Zara's heart raced faster, her mind screaming at her to move, to escape. But it was too late. The device activated, a beam of light shooting down and enveloping her in a harsh, unyielding glow. Zara felt her thoughts scatter, her mind being pulled in different directions at once. The pain was subtle at first, like a dull ache deep inside her skull, but it quickly grew, intensifying with every passing second. It felt like her very essence was being ripped apart, examined and pieced back together in ways that made no sense to her. Tears streamed down Zara's face as she struggled against the pain, against the invasive presence she could feel clawing at her thoughts. She knew she had to hold on, to stay strong. Her father always told her that fear was only powerful if you let it control you. But this fear, this pain, it was unlike anything she had ever experienced. The aliens continued their work, oblivious to Zara's suffering. To them, she was just a subject, a specimen to be studied and understood. They had no concept of her pain, no understanding of the terror she felt. Their cold, analytical minds were focused solely on their research, on the data they could extract from the human child before them. And so, the experiments began. For what felt like hours, Zara was subjected to a barrage of tests and procedures, each one more invasive than the last. Her mind was probed, her memories sifted through like pages in a book. The aliens sought to understand her, to decipher the complexities of the human mind and body. But in their quest for knowledge, they were blind to the damage they were causing. Zara's body trembled with exhaustion, her mind teetering on the brink of collapse. But through it all, she held on to one thought, one hope, her father. She knew he would come for her. He had to. He was the strongest, bravest man she knew, and he would move heaven and earth to find her. In the cold, sterile darkness of the alien ship, Zara clung to that hope. It was the only thing that kept her going, the only light in the overwhelming darkness that surrounded her. Little did she know, her father was already on his way, driven by a force the aliens could never understand, a force that would soon change the course of their encounter forever. The night was unusually cold in Willow Creek. The stars above twinkled like scattered diamonds, oblivious to the turmoil below. John Mercer sat on the edge of Zara's bed, the scent of her favorite lavender shampoo still lingering in the air. His hands trembled as he held her pillow, clutching it tightly to his chest as if it could somehow bring her back. It had been only a few hours since she vanished, but to John it felt like an eternity. The police had already come and gone, their flashlights sweeping through the fields and woods with practiced indifference. To them, Zara's disappearance was just another case, a young girl who had likely wandered off or, worse, run away. But John knew his daughter better than anyone. Zara wasn't the kind of girl who would run away, and she certainly wouldn't wander off without telling anyone. No, something had taken her, something beyond the ordinary. John had seen the lights in the sky just before it happened. He had heard the strange low hum that resonated through the air, a sound that set his nerves on edge. He had dismissed it at first, thinking it was just his imagination playing tricks on him. But when Zara didn't come home, when he found her bike abandoned in the field with no sign of her, the truth began to sink in. He had always suspected that there was more to the universe than what met the eye. As a former Special Forces operative, John had been privy to secrets that most people could only dream of. Classified missions, unexplained phenomena, encounters with things that defied logic. He had always pushed those memories to the back of his mind, focusing on the things he could control, like raising his daughter after his wife's death. But now, all those old fears and suspicions were coming back to haunt him. John knew that Zara's disappearance wasn't a coincidence. It was something deliberate, something far beyond the realm of human understanding, and he was determined to find out what it was. With a heavy heart, John rose from Zara's bed and made his way to the small study at the back of the house. The room was dimly lit, cluttered with old books, maps, and mementos from his days in the service. In the corner stood a locked cabinet, its contents hidden from the world. John hesitated for a moment, then reached for the key around his neck. He unlocked the cabinet with a heavy click, revealing its contents. A collection of high-tech equipment, weapons, and devices that most people wouldn't even recognize. At the center of the collection was a small, unassuming device, a sleek black tablet with a screen that glowed faintly in the darkness. John powered it on, his fingers moving with practiced ease as he navigated through its encrypted menus. The device connected to a hidden network, one that spanned the globe, linking together a group of individuals known only as the Watchers. The Watchers were a secretive organization, one that operated outside the boundaries of any government or military. Their purpose was simple: to monitor and investigate extraterrestrial activity on Earth. John had first encountered them during a mission in South America, where he had stumbled upon an alien artifact buried deep in the jungle. The Watchers had intervened, wiping the event from official records and recruiting John into their ranks. He had worked with them for a few years, gathering intelligence on various alien encounters, but had eventually left the organization to raise Zara. Now he needed their help again. John sent out a coded message, detailing Zara's disappearance and the strange phenomena he had witnessed. He knew it wouldn't take long for the Watchers to respond. They were always watching, always waiting for the next sign of extraterrestrial activity. As he waited, John paced the room, his mind racing with possibilities. He thought of the countless reports he had read over the years, abductions, disappearances, mysterious lights in the sky. He had always believed there was a pattern, a purpose behind these events, but he had never been able to prove it. Now it was personal. Now he had to find the truth. It wasn't long before the tablet chimed, signaling an incoming transmission. John quickly answered, the screen flickering to life as a familiar face appeared. It was Dr. Elena Roberts, a lead scientist within the Watchers and one of John's closest allies during his time with the organization. Her expression was grim, her eyes filled with concern. "John," she said, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "I got your message. We've been tracking unusual activity in your area for the past few days. Energy readings off the charts, similar to what we've seen in other abduction cases." John felt a chill run down his spine. "Do you know who took her?" he asked, his voice low and controlled, masking the desperation he felt inside. Dr. Roberts nodded, her face darkening. "We believe it's the Zelnorians. They're a highly advanced alien species, known for their scientific curiosity. They travel the galaxy, abducting life forms to study and experiment on. They have no concept of morality as we understand it. To them, Zara is just another specimen, another piece of data to be collected." John's hands clenched into fists. The thought of his little girl being subjected to cold, inhumane experiments by these aliens made his blood boil. "Where are they? How do I get her back?" Dr. Roberts hesitated for a moment, then sighed. "John, the Zelnorians are not like anything we've encountered before. Their technology is far beyond ours. Their ships are nearly impossible to track, and even if we could find them, getting on board would be a suicide mission." John's eyes hardened. "I don't care about the risks. I'm getting my daughter back no matter what." There was a long pause as Dr. Roberts studied John's determined face. She had seen that look before during missions where failure wasn't an option. She knew there was no point in trying to dissuade him. "All right," she finally said. "I'll do what I can to help. We've developed some new tech since you left. Cloaking devices, energy weapons, even a prototype teleportation system. It's risky, but if anyone can pull this off, it's you." John nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope for the first time since Zara had vanished. "Send me everything you've got. I'll be ready." As the transmission ended, John felt a renewed sense of purpose. The fear and despair that had gripped him earlier were replaced by a cold, steely resolve. He was a soldier, a father, and now he was going to be Zara's savior. The Zelnorians had no idea who they were dealing with. They may have advanced technology, but they had never faced a force as powerful as a father's love for his child. John quickly began preparations, gathering weapons and equipment, mentally mapping out a plan of attack. He knew it wouldn't be easy. There were countless unknowns, and the odds were stacked against him. But John Mercer had faced impossible situations before, and he had always come out on top. As he packed the last of his gear, a memory flashed through his mind. Zara laughing as they played in the fields, her face lit up with pure joy. It was a memory that fueled his determination, that drove him forward. He couldn't fail her. He wouldn't. With everything ready, John stepped out into the night, the cold air biting at his skin. He looked up at the stars, the vast, infinite expanse of the universe stretching out before him. Somewhere out there, his daughter was waiting for him, counting on him to bring her home, and John Mercer would not let her down. He took one last look at his house, the home he had built for Zara, then turned and walked towards his car. The Watchers would be waiting for him at a secure location, ready to transport him to the Zelnorians' last known coordinates. As he drove off into the night, one thought echoed in his mind, over and over again. "I'm coming, Zara. I'm coming." Zara lay on the cold metallic table, her small body restrained by invisible forces. The room was dim, illuminated only by the eerie glow of alien symbols etched into the walls. She felt more alone than she had ever felt in her life, more terrified than she could even begin to comprehend. Time had lost all meaning. The hours or perhaps days of her captivity had blended into one long, unending nightmare. The Zelnorians moved around her with the same detached efficiency as before. They communicated in their strange, clicking language, their black eyes devoid of any emotion as they prepared for the next round of experiments. To them, Zara was not a frightened child but merely a specimen, an organism to be studied and dissected both mentally and physically. The leader of the group, a particularly tall and imposing Zelnorian with skin that shimmered with a deep iridescent blue, approached her. Zara's breath hitched as it reached out, its long, slender fingers hovering just above her forehead. She could feel a strange, cold energy emanating from the alien, a force that seemed to reach into her very soul. The leader placed its fingers on Zara's temples, and instantly a searing pain shot through her head. It was as if her mind was being torn apart piece by piece, every thought, every memory ripped from her consciousness and laid bare for these beings to examine. She tried to resist, to hold on to something, anything, but the pain was too intense, too overwhelming. Images flashed before her eyes, rapid and disjointed, a kaleidoscope of memories from her short life. Her first day at school, her mother's gentle smile, her father teaching her how to ride a bike. Each memory was vivid, real, and yet, as the Zelnorian probed deeper, the images began to distort, to twist into something unrecognizable. The alien's mind was melding with hers, reshaping her memories, analyzing them, discarding what it deemed irrelevant. Zara's screams echoed in the sterile room, but the Zelnorians paid no heed. Their focus was absolute, their curiosity insatiable. They were searching for something, a key to understanding the human condition, a way to unlock the secrets of the human brain. But in their cold, calculated way, they failed to understand that what they were doing was tearing Zara apart. The leader withdrew its fingers, and Zara's body slumped back against the table, her chest heaving with ragged breaths. The pain ebbed slightly, leaving behind a dull, throbbing ache that pulsed through her skull. She felt weak, drained, as if a part of her had been taken away, leaving a hollow void in its place. But the torment was far from over. The leader clicked a command, and another device descended from the ceiling, its cylindrical form humming with a sinister energy. Zara's eyes widened in fear as the device activated, its metallic arms extending towards her. They hovered just above her chest, their tips glowing with a soft blue light. Before she could even process what was happening, the device emitted a high-pitched whine, and Zara felt a sharp, burning pain in her chest. It was as if the device was burrowing into her, piercing through her skin, her bones, into the very core of her being. The pain was excruciating, unlike anything she had ever felt before. It spread through her entire body, every nerve ending on fire, every muscle seizing in agony. The Zelnorians observed her reaction with clinical detachment, their black eyes watching intently as the device continued its work. They were collecting data, monitoring her physiological responses, measuring her tolerance to pain. To them, this was all part of the experiment, a necessary step in their quest for knowledge. They did not see Zara as a person, a child with thoughts and feelings. They saw her as an object, a tool to be used and discarded once her purpose had been served. Zara's mind began to retreat, pulling away from the pain, the fear, the overwhelming despair. She tried to focus on something, anything to distract herself from the agony that threatened to consume her. She thought of her father, of his strong arms holding her tight, of his voice reassuring her that everything would be okay. She clung to that image, to the hope that he would find her, that he would save her from this nightmare. But even that hope was fading, slipping away as the pain grew more intense, more unbearable. Zara could feel herself slipping away, her consciousness drifting further and further from reality. The world around her became a blur, the sounds, the lights, the voices of the Zelnorians all merging into a single, incomprehensible noise. Just when she thought she could take no more, the device retracted and the pain subsided, leaving Zara gasping for breath. She was drenched in sweat, her body trembling uncontrollably. She felt as if she had been torn apart and hastily put back together, a fragile shell of her former self. The Zelnorians conferred among themselves, their clicking language echoing in the chamber. Zara couldn't understand them, but she could sense their frustration. They were not finding what they were looking for. The experiments were not yielding the results they had hoped for, and time was running out. The leader stepped forward again, its black eyes narrowing as it studied Zara with renewed interest. There was something in its gaze, a hint of something darker, more menacing. The other Zelnorians seemed to sense it too, their movements becoming more urgent, more purposeful. Zara's heart pounded in her chest as she watched the leader approach her. She knew they were planning something worse than anything she had endured so far. She could feel it in the air, a cold, creeping dread that seeped into her very bones. But as the leader raised its hand to initiate the next procedure, a sudden, violent tremor shook the ship. The walls shuddered, the floor beneath Zara's feet vibrating with the force of the impact. The Zelnorians exchanged hurried clicks, their calm demeanor suddenly shattered by the unexpected disturbance. Zara's eyes widened in confusion, her mind struggling to make sense of what was happening. The ship trembled again, this time more violently, sending a few of the alien instruments crashing to the floor. Alarms blared, their shrill tones filling the air with a sense of urgency. The leader barked out commands, its black eyes darting around the room as it tried to assess the situation. But before it could act, the chamber's door burst open, and Zara's heart nearly stopped at what she saw. There, standing in the doorway, was her father. John Mercer was a force of nature, a whirlwind of motion and fury as he stormed into the room. He was clad in advanced combat gear, his face set in a grim expression of determination. In his hands he wielded a weapon unlike anything Zara had ever seen, its barrel glowing with an ominous blue light. The Zelnorians reacted instantly, their slender forms moving with inhuman speed as they tried to intercept the intruder. But John was faster. He fired his weapon, and a bolt of energy shot from the barrel, striking the nearest alien and sending it flying across the room. It crumpled to the floor, its iridescent skin flickering as it lay motionless. John didn't hesitate. He moved with lethal precision, taking down each Zelnorian that dared to approach him. His movements were fluid, efficient, a testament to his years of training and experience. To him, this was just another mission, another enemy to eliminate. But this mission was different. This time he was fighting not just for his life, but for his daughters. Zara watched in awe and relief as her father tore through the Zelnorians with ruthless efficiency. They had taken her, tortured her, but now they were paying the price. John Mercer was unstoppable, driven by a fury that no alien could comprehend. The leader was the last to fall. It tried to flee, but John was relentless, his weapon cutting it down before it could reach the door. The alien crumpled to the floor, its black eyes dimming as life left its body. For a moment the room was silent, the only sound Zara's ragged breathing as she lay on the table. John stood over the fallen aliens, his chest heaving with exertion, his weapon still aimed at the last of the Zelnorians. Then slowly he turned to Zara. "Dad," Zara whispered, her voice weak and trembling. She could barely believe he was really there, standing before her like a guardian angel in the midst of this nightmare. John's expression softened as he rushed to her side, his heart breaking at the sight of his little girl, bruised and battered, lying on that cold alien table. He quickly deactivated the restraints, lifting her into his arms with a tenderness that belied the violence he had just unleashed. "I'm here, sweetheart," he murmured, holding her close as tears welled up in his eyes. "I'm here and I'm taking you home." Zara clung to him, burying her face in his chest as sobs racked her small frame. The fear, the pain, the despair, it all came crashing down on her, overwhelming her in a flood of emotion. But through it all, she felt safe, secure in her father's arms. He had come for her just as she knew he would. He had saved her from the nightmare, but even as they embraced, the ship trembled again, the alarms growing louder, more insistent. The Zelnorians might have been defeated, but the danger was far from over. The ship was destabilizing, its systems failing as the damage John had inflicted began to take its toll. "We need to get out of here," John said, his voice urgent as he lifted Zara into his arms. "Hold on tight, Zara. We're not safe yet." With Zara held securely against his chest, John sprinted towards the door. The corridor outside was a chaotic mess of flashing lights and blaring sirens, but John navigated it with the precision of a soldier on a mission. He knew the ship was on the brink of destruction, and they had only minutes to escape. As they ran, Zara clung to her father, her heart pounding with fear and hope. The ship was falling apart around them, the walls shaking, debris raining down from the ceiling. But through it all, she held on to the one thing that mattered. Her father was here, and he would never let anything happen to her. They reached the extraction point just as the ship's systems began to fail completely. The Watcher's teleportation device was already activated, its swirling blue energy forming a portal back to the safety of Earth. John didn't hesitate. He leapt through the portal, clutching Zara tightly as the alien ship crumbled behind them. In an instant, they were back on solid ground, the cool night air of Earth a stark contrast to the sterile, suffocating atmosphere of the Zelnorian ship. The Watchers were there, waiting with medical personnel and equipment, ready to assist. But all Zara could focus on was her father, his strong arms holding her, his voice reassuring her that it was over, that she was safe. As the portal closed behind them, sealing off the alien threat for good, Zara allowed herself to finally relax. The nightmare was over. She was home. and her father, her hero, had saved her. But even as she drifted into an exhausted sleep in his arms, she knew that the world was no longer the same. The Zelnorians had shown her a darkness she could never forget. But in that darkness she had also found the light, the unwavering love of her father, a force stronger than anything in the universe. And with that thought, Zara finally let go, slipping into a deep, peaceful sleep, knowing that as long as her father was with her, nothing could ever hurt her again. The early morning air was crisp and cool as the Watcher's extraction team touched down in a secluded field outside Willow Creek. The sky was just beginning to lighten, the first rays of dawn casting a soft glow over the landscape. But there was no time to admire the sunrise. John Mercer's mind was focused solely on the task at hand, ensuring Zara's safety and ending the Zelnorian threat once and for all. The moment they arrived, John stepped off the transport, cradling Zara in his arms. She was unconscious, her body exhausted from the trauma she had endured, but she was alive. That was all that mattered to John. Her small chest rose and fell with each breath, and he could feel her heartbeat against his own, a steady reminder that she was still with him. The Watcher's medics were quick to take Zara from him, guiding her onto a stretcher and rushing her to the nearby medical tent. John's eyes followed her, his heart aching with the need to stay by her side, but he knew his job wasn't done yet. The Zelnorian ship was still out there, and as long as it remained, the threat wasn't over. Dr. Elena Roberts approached him, her face etched with concern. "She's stable, John. Our team will take good care of her, but we need to act fast. The ship is destabilizing, and if it explodes in orbit, the fallout could be catastrophic." John nodded, his expression grim. "What's our plan?" Dr. Roberts led him to a large holographic display where a 3D model of the Zelnorian ship hovered in midair. The ship was massive, a sleek angular construct of alien metal, its surface alive with strange energy patterns. But it was clear from the readouts that the ship was in bad shape. Fires raged in several compartments, and power levels were fluctuating wildly. "We've managed to isolate the ship's central core," Dr. Roberts explained, pointing to a section near the heart of the vessel. "That's where the main power source is located. If we can overload it, we can destroy the ship and neutralize the threat. But we only have one shot at this. If the core stabilizes before we can act, the ship will recover, and we'll lose our chance." John's jaw tightened. He had already fought his way through the Zelnorians once, but this was different. This wasn't just about rescuing Zara. It was about ensuring that the Zelnorians could never harm anyone else again. It was about justice, about retribution for what they had done to his daughter. "I'll do it," John said without hesitation. "Send me in, and I'll make sure that ship never sees another sunrise." Dr. Roberts looked at him, her eyes filled with both admiration and concern. She knew John was capable. There was no one else she would trust with a mission like this. But the risks were enormous. If the ship's core detonated while John was still on board, there would be no escape. "John," she began, her voice soft but firm, "you don't have to do this. We have other agents." "No," John interrupted, his voice resolute. "This is my fight. Those aliens took my daughter, and I'm going to make damn sure they never do it to anyone else. I'm going." Dr. Roberts held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded. "All right. We'll give you all the support we can, but once you're inside, you'll be on your own. You'll have to move fast." John nodded, already shifting into mission mode. "How do I get in?" "The ship's shields are weakened from the damage you inflicted earlier," Dr. Roberts explained. "We can teleport you directly into the core chamber, but you'll need to overload the system manually. We'll provide you with a remote detonator. Set it to a 5-minute countdown and get out of there as fast as you can." John took a deep breath, steadying himself. This was it, the final mission. He couldn't afford to fail. Too much was at stake. "I'm ready," he said, his voice steady. Dr. Roberts handed him a small device, the detonator that would set the core to overload. "Good luck, John. We'll be ready to extract you as soon as the detonator is set." With one last look at the medical tent where Zara was being cared for, John stepped into the teleportation chamber. The air hummed with energy as the Watchers activated the system, the familiar blue light enveloping him as the teleportation process began. In an instant, John was no longer in the tent. He found himself standing in the heart of the Zelnorian ship, surrounded by walls of alien metal that pulsed with a sickly green light. The air was thick with the acrid smell of burning circuitry, and the floor beneath his feet vibrated with the unstable energy of the ship's failing systems. The core chamber was vast, dominated by a massive glowing sphere suspended in the center of the room. Tendrils of energy arced out from the sphere, connecting to various consoles and control panels that lined the walls. The entire room thrummed with power, the energy levels fluctuating wildly as the ship struggled to stabilize itself. John didn't waste any time. He sprinted toward the central console, his eyes scanning the alien controls for anything that resembled a power regulation system. The Watchers had provided him with some basic knowledge of Zelnorian technology, but he was still working with limited information. He had to trust his instincts, to rely on his training and experience to guide him. The console was a chaotic mess of buttons, switches, and holographic displays, all labeled in the Zelnorian script. But John quickly identified the main power regulator, a large lever positioned next to a series of glowing indicators. He grabbed the lever and pulled it down, hard, overriding the ship's automatic stabilization protocols. Alarms blared as the power levels surged, the core beginning to overheat. John activated the detonator, setting the countdown to 5 minutes. The device beeped, and a red light began to flash, signaling that the countdown had begun. The core was now a ticking time bomb, and when it went off, it would take the entire ship with it. With the detonator in place, John turned and sprinted back toward the center of the chamber. The teleportation system was still active, and the Watchers were ready to extract him. But as he ran, the ship shuddered violently, a massive explosion ripping through one of the lower decks. The floor buckled beneath John's feet, and he was thrown to the ground. The wind knocked out of him as he slammed into the metal surface. Pain shot through his side, but John forced himself to get up, to keep moving. He couldn't afford to stop now. The ship was collapsing around him, the walls groaning as the core's energy spiraled out of control. Fires raged through the corridors, and the once sterile air was now thick with smoke and the stench of burning metal. John staggered to his feet, his vision swimming as he tried to focus. He could see the teleportation beacon just ahead, its blue light flickering as the ship's systems continued to fail. He pushed himself forward, every muscle in his body screaming in protest, but he knew he had to keep going. The ground shook again, and John nearly lost his balance as another explosion rocked the ship. He could feel the heat of the fire at his back, the flames licking at his heels as he pushed through the last few meters to the teleportation beacon. With a final burst of strength, John threw himself into the blue light, his hand slamming down on the activation switch just as the core reached critical mass. The ship's walls seemed to warp and twist around him as the teleportation system engaged, the familiar sensation of being torn apart and reassembled washing over him. And then suddenly, he was back in the field outside Willow Creek, the early morning light blinding after the dim, smoky interior of the alien ship. He collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath, his body trembling with exhaustion and pain. Dr. Roberts and the other Watchers rushed to his side, helping him to his feet, as the sky above them lit up with a brilliant flash. The Zelnorian ship exploded in orbit, a massive fireball consuming it in an instant. The shockwave rippled through the atmosphere, a thunderous roar echoing across the landscape. John watched the explosion with a grim satisfaction. The Zelnorians were gone, their ship destroyed, their threat neutralized. But the victory felt hollow. It wasn't just about defeating the aliens. It was about what they had taken from him, from Zara. The scars they had left on his daughter, on their lives, would never fully heal. Dr. Roberts squeezed his shoulder, her voice soft as she said, "You did it, John. It's over." John nodded, his gaze still fixed on the fading remnants of the explosion in the sky. "Yeah," he murmured, his voice hoarse. "It's over." The Watchers escorted John back to the medical tent where Zara lay resting, her face peaceful in sleep. John knelt beside her, gently brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. She looked so small, so fragile, but she was a fighter. She had survived the unimaginable, and she would heal. They both would. As he sat there holding Zara's hand, John felt a sense of calm wash over him. The nightmare was over, and they were together again. The Zelnorians had underestimated the strength of the human spirit, the power of a father's love, and in the end it was that love that had brought Zara back, that had saved them both. The Watchers would continue their work, monitoring the skies, guarding against threats from beyond. But John Mercer had fought his last battle. He had done what he needed to do, and now it was time to focus on what truly mattered: his daughter, their future. As the first light of dawn bathed the field in golden hues, John sat by Zara's side, watching over her as she slept, knowing that no matter what challenges the future held, they would face them together.